Next, I would like to ask our chairman, you can be seated. I'd like to ask our chairman, the chairman of the Tribal Council, Mr. Fred Matt.
Thank you, Tony, and thank you for, as you always do, step up and help us do these sort of occasions, moderate. You always do such a great job, including everybody. And I was told that I actually can get up here a little later on in the program. I'm actually here today kind of serving two functions. I always seem to wear more than one hat. It's kind of just my lifestyle, I guess. But today I feel especially honored to be here, as most of you are, and that's the reason why you're here. But on behalf of the Tribal Council of the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes, I want to welcome all of you to this momentous occasion, the anniversary of 20 years of our wilderness area. You know, I've said time and time again, as I travel through Indian country and as I go to meetings and different functions on behalf of the tribe, we're recognized for doing a lot of things, being a first in a lot of things. And that gives me great pride and great pleasure to be the one that actually stands there and receives those compliments of some of the things we've done here at the tribe. But really, I always say this, that it takes all of us to make these things happen. And although there's probably a few of us that want to get up and say a few words and want to talk about what we are celebrating here today, it's those of you that are sitting out here in the chairs that actually contribute and make it possible. I see a lot of people here today that without their efforts, we wouldn't be standing here today celebrating 20 years. So I really mean that sincerely. I want to thank you. And I want to thank you on behalf not only of the Tribal Council and the membership of this tribe, but all those who have gone on, our elders, those who have really at the time stepped up and saw the need for doing something so great. And you know, I think there's going to be a little bit of a historical perspective that Tom McDonald is going to provide. And I can stand up here and like I said, I understand I'm going to get an opportunity to come back and talk to you a little bit of my involvement in the early days, the Wildland Recreation Program, and actually stepping foot in most of the areas behind us. But you know the old saying, a picture's worth 1,000 words, but you know, there's really no words that can describe what you see in the backdrop here. It speaks for itself. And again, if it wasn't for the philosophy and the foresight of our elders and our people of this tribe, we wouldn't have these things to enjoy. As long as I've been on the Tribal Council, it's always been a priority to protect and preserve our lands, and again, I just feel so proud of that. So that's my part of doing the welcome. I just again want to thank all of you for being here today. I know it was kind of hard to get out of your office and come up here. So so with that, I'm going to turn the mic over to Tom McDonald, and then maybe later on in the program I'll have an opportunity to say a few other more personal words of what the wilderness has meant to me. So, thank you.
Good afternoon. I have my water bottle here because I'm a terrible public speaker and I'm going to choke up on you. I know I am. I want to thank all of you guys and gals for coming today. It is a beautiful day. And the celebration of our tribal wilderness really is a celebration of our people. It shows the dedication and the spirit that we have as a people to continue on forever. And this is part of our landscape. This is part of our sense of place. It's our background. It's who we are. So it's really wonderful for me today to be here and add to that in any way I can. But to get back into the history, a lot of different things occurred through time with our people. But when our tribes were the first tribe to reorganize under the Indian Reorganization Act, one of the first actions that newly formed tribal council did was try to set aside this mission range as an Indian-owned and maintained national park. It was precedent-setting thought then, and it certainly, as we dedicated this as a wilderness area, it's precedent-setting today. So that the first action under the federal policies that reorganized our tribes, that first thought that our tribal council did back then was the right thought, and it came true. Although it took some time for it to happen, it isn't a national park, but it certainly fulfills the needs that our people wanted to have at that point in time. So that was one of the first actions. Later on, when that occurred in the 1930s, the Department of Interior, the Indian Affairs Office didn't want the tribes to do that, so there wasn't a national park created. They denied that. Later on, there was a gentleman who went through the country. He was a forester. His name was Bob Marshall, and he went around the countryside looking at remaining roadless areas around, particularly the Northwest, and he recognized that the Mission Range was a fabulous piece of real estate that needed protected, and he recommended that it be put on a roadless designation for protection. That was put forward and in place for quite some time. Our tribes, again, wanting to be the leaders and take charge of our destiny, as we should, didn't want the federal government to tell us what to do with our landscape. If it was going to be classified as a roadless area or national park or wilderness area, we wanted to do it ourselves. So we requested that the federal government take the Mission Range off as a roadless area, and that we would manage it ourselves. Then during that was during the 50s, late 50s. Then during the early part of the 70s, through our BIA forestry management, they looked at all of our forests, and a lot of the forests were classified as commercial or non-commercial, roadless or roaded. And the Mission Range had, for quite some time, been protected by the classification of non-commercial timberlands and roadless lands. But as time progressed, they looked at the Mission Range and the foothills in particular as a place of quite valuable stumpage. A lot of fiber there to take to the mills, and so they started recommending timber sales in the lower foothills. Because it was such a sensitive place for our communities and our people, and a lot of the things that have been happening on the reservation up to that time, very large, extensive clear cutting, large areas of roads being constructed, our people were really pretty fed up with that type of land use management. And we wanted our land to be treated much better than that. And so really what I saw at that point in time in the mid-70s was the communities, grassroots, from grandmas and grandpas down to little children, saying we don't want to have that type of activity on our landscape. So we especially don't want to see that in the Mission Range, in the foothills of the missions, or anywhere in the missions. So there was a lot of activity in the mid-70s to stop timber sale that was proposed just to the north of us in the Ashley Creek drainage from Mission Reservoir here to McDonald Lake. And it basically was the starting point for the current designation that we have today. There was a lot of folks that were involved with different issues then. There was the Save the Missions group. There was the newly formed Culture Committee that really organized people. And then there was Thurman Trosper, who came forward as a representative of the Forest Service, a person with a long standing of administrative skills, and he was the president of the Wilderness Society within the United States. And so he came forward and met with the Tribal Council during this time also, and was making recommendations to say, let's go ahead and look at this as designating this as as a tribal wilderness, using those parameters that the dominant society can think of under the Wilderness Act of 1964, and utilize that framework to protect this landscape. In 1979, the council really considered that really dramatically, and in December of 1979, they basically set aside a bulk of the Mission Range as a wilderness area with the boundaries and a management plan to be defined at a later date. It was at that point in time then that the University of Montana, through the work of Thurman and others, was contracted. A gentleman of the name of David Rockwell was a student and a forestry person at the University of Montana, and he helped design a study of the Mission Range with students of the University of Montana, and they came forward with a recommendation of a boundary and a management plan. That was reviewed by council, and they decided to customize it. They didn't accept it, they decided to customize it even more to the needs of our people. And they created a wildland recreation program in 1980. And David did such a wonderful job working with the tribal council and his recommendations through that document of the mission study. He was the first wildland recreation program manager and actually drafted the first management plan, which has been revised since then, and finished off the boundary and helped draft the wilderness ordinance itself. That was presented to the tribal council in June of 1982, June 15th, which is the true anniversary will be tomorrow. And that's really set the standard and the precedent. It set aside 93,000 acres of private land owned by an Indian tribe and designated as wilderness area. The first time in the history of the United States that such an action had been taken place by an Indian tribe or by a private landowner. So it was very precedent setting. It did demonstrate to most folks that our tribes were very deeply concerned about the environment and our way of life, and that we do demonstrate fortitude to manage our landscape correctly. So I was very privileged in 1989 to have Rhonda Swaney, who's here today, our Natural Resource Department head, hire me as a wildland recreation program manager and carry forward the work that David had originally started on. That's kind of a short history, kind of a long history, but somewhat of a history. I would like to take a moment here to recognize some of the people that came by today, that some of the folks that were with me. The Reservation Fish and Wildlife Advisory Board is here today. They help set the regulations for hunting and fishing on the reservation. And the wilderness area, of course, is very important to them and all users of recreational pursuits in western Montana. So they're standing around, and if you see them in the background, they're over there by Dale Becker, and they're scattered around. Some of them you may know: Ray Aylesworth, Rod Johnson, Sid Rundell, what am I missing? Dave Wiseman. Of course, Terry Tanner's on the committee also, and Ralph Good. That was the last one. Anyway, I thank you all for coming. I thank the Job Corps for preparing the food, and any of you want to come up and talk about how important the wilderness is to yourself and what it's meant to you, please do. Thank you.
I'd just like to thank Tom McDonald for coming up here and giving their historical speech. As you can tell, he's very knowledgeable in the subject, and he would do a lot better job than I would up here. So we had to wait around for him to show up. But Tom has worked for the program for 14 years. Again, like you said, back in 1988, 89, he was hired as a program manager, and through that time he has Terry and I guess, to tell you what we're going to do, Tom, could you come up here? Yeah, just play. Just within the last, this spring, Tom McDonald was promoted to our division manager, Division of Fish, Wildlife, Recreation, and Conservation. So he has moved out of the Wildland Recreation Program. Throughout the years, he has showed all of us, he has shared with us his knowledge, wisdom, support, and leadership to our program, to our people in the program, to our tribe, and throughout the whole community. He is involved in a lot of activities and boards and a lot of environmental issues to help preserve our reservation, our homeland. And Terry and I would like to present him with a Pendleton blanket for his many years of service to the Wildland Recreation Program. And Terry would like to say a few things too.
Yeah, I'd like to say, just on behalf of the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribe and all the tribal people here on this reservation, I just like to really thank Tom for all the very hard work that he has done in the past. He's been a very instrumental manager for the Wildland Recreation Program, and not only is he known very well here on the reservation, but he's known nationwide, and there's a lot of people out in the United States that really respect Tom for the hard work that he has done over the years, and I just wanted to congratulate Tom for moving on up.
The blanket we gave him is a Chief Joseph blanket. As Tom's part of his background is Nez Perce too, along with our tribes too. So I'd like to thank you, Tom.
Thank you, guys. You know I'm not going anywhere. I'm still going to be watching you like a hawk. Guys out the back. I really have appreciated working for the Wildland Recreation Program, and it's been a real honor for me to work and do the work that I did in the wilderness area and the different issues and protecting it. There's one person that I really enjoyed working with, besides David and some of the other people that are here, but one person in particular was, and she's here today, and she still works on the other side of the missions. Carrie Gunderson is here, and we spent a lot of time working with Carrie. She's a wilderness ranger for the Forest Service on the other side of the mountains, and I really have, over time, appreciated working with her. She's given us a lot of insight, and her knowledge on wilderness education is the best, and we really strive to use a lot of the examples that she has done in our wilderness education program. So Carrie, where are you? Here somewhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. As it was said earlier by our chairman, Fred Matt, this Flathead Nation, the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes, over the years has grown to not only a very powerful government, tribal government in the United States, but it has become recognized all over the United States for the efforts of its employees, of the people that have worked so hard, as was demonstrated here by Tom McDonald and others. Those people that are dedicated are truly interested in preserving our Indian lands, for our Indian people, for future generations. And it's because of those people that work so hard at the ground level, are dedicated, that has elevated this nation to where it is at. And as you look around throughout the reservation at the different programs that the tribes have incorporated over the years, tribal land, tribal rec, fisheries, wildlife, all of those different programs that are part of the tribal government organization have contributed and have given their dedication and has made their jobs not only a job, but something more than a job that has become personal. And when it becomes a personal thing to the employees, that's when they excel. And who's to benefit from all of those? Not only us here today, but all of the Flathead Nation. And as you travel throughout the country, different meetings, different conferences, it doesn't take very long to hear the name Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes because of its efforts, because it stands tall, head and shoulders above many tribes in the United States. And it's because of what was just here shared with you today, like Tom McDonald. So again, I would like personally to thank Tom McDonald. Next, I would like to ask Shirley Trahan to come up on behalf of her mother and her aunts who were part of this group of people who worked so hard to preserve our wilderness, to create this tribal wilderness to what it is. Shirley currently is the language specialist for the Salish Pondere Culture Committee, a tribal organization, and I'd like to please welcome Shirley.
Gestern jak oké pesia. Pisen skadelig, pisen gelacht. Yeah, thanks. Good afternoon to all of you, my fellow tribal people and my friends, my relatives. I asked Terry to give me the high sign when 1 minute had gone by, but maybe I'll take a little longer. I remember a time when my mother and my aunts were not people who would speak their minds. But as time went on, the older they got, when they looked at all of our resources, when they looked at all that was important to them, which is the lands, the animals, the growing things, the water, the air, they realized that we needed all that. They realized that that's all that they used to live. For them, you know, I don't think they looked at the outside world, but just here, where their hearts were. I believe they thought something had to be done so that the animals would have a place to live still. There'd still be room for them. They believed in the plants for food and for medicine. And so that's another thing that caused them to step forward and give support to those people who wanted to make this a wilderness. And for the spiritual, they believe that these places need to be saved for future generations. The water, those mountains create a lot of water. A lot of water passes through there. And I'm sure it was their thoughts that we need to take care of that water. Also in this water, all these waterways, comes our food. Many hours my family spent fishing for our meals. The hours that were spent hunting, the days, not only for my families, our families, but for all the Indian families around here. So this, this was really something they wanted to keep for us, for their grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and so on. So that's why they gave this support. And I remember those times. They were also instrumental in starting the Salish Pondere Culture Committee. They believed our traditions, our culture, our language was so dear to their hearts that they did not see that, they did not want to see that go away. And we still are doing our best, a lot of us, to keep those things going, to keep those things alive, because that makes us who we are. I'm very thankful to my mom and my aunts for everything they taught me, to be respectful of all of this. Not only for us, but for those coming after us. Not only is this a beautiful place, it also sustains us in so many ways. So I'll call that my minute and a few more minutes after that. So thank you for listening. Lemlem Chpesia. And have a very good day. It's very beautiful up here.
Tony knows me too well, and many of you out there probably do too. I've got a reputation of rambling a little bit. But again, I just, yeah, Ralph's going like this. I'll try to be brief, but you know, this is such a heartfelt moment for myself, and I know a lot of you, and I don't know at what level that you're sitting here today and what this wilderness area has meant to you. And I think it probably means a little bit something different to each and every one of you, whether you've had the opportunity like myself to spend a lot of nights and days and weeks sometimes in that area enjoying the beauty, or if you just sat out your back porch and looked at it from home or from here. But I was hired by Dave Rockwell after he was hired by the tribes at the Wildland Recreation Program back in 1980 as the first, I think, technician that worked for the Wildland Recreation Program. So I feel so blessed in having that opportunity, because as we grow and mold ourselves. It's things like this that do that help put life into perspective for you. And certainly it has done that for me. I remember a lot of days, good days and maybe not so good days, with trail crews, doing campsite inventory, from one end, from Buck Lake down to Hell Roaring, and almost up every drainage in the missions. And there's just so many emotions or thoughts or feelings that I could think of. And probably one of the things that will help sustain me as I get older, and I can't enjoy those areas any longer because of physical capabilities, I'll always have those memories to rely on to help keep me going. But there again, there's so many people here today that I can look around that feel the same way about that area, that has visited, that has enjoyed. From the person that Tom mentioned earlier, Carrie, you know, so many days in my earlier years when I was helping the wildland recreation program in different areas, I remember being trapped on the side of Panoramic Peak July 15th. If you thought the weather was bad last week, you ought to get stuck in a tent there for a whole day. And I remember one time flying into High Park. Carrie's probably going to kill me. Flying into High Park because Carrie got socked in as the manager on the other side, her and her friend, for 2 days, and her husband was worried. And so they sent out the search party after her. And she was embarrassed more than anything. But I remember so many experiences. Another one, I'll tell a little story on Dave Rockwell. At the time, I was probably 30 years old, and I thought I was in pretty good shape. And we got to Island Lake on the other side, and we had to go up and see if our bear management poster was still there at Cliff Pass. And so I was trudging up the trail, and Dave could tell that after a long day of hiking that I was probably feeling pretty worn out at the time. He probably sensed it. And so we get to that last little pitch just before Cliff Pass, and it's straight up. And so I was just about ready to take my last step and sat down and huff and puff, and here old Dave Rockwell just takes off on a dead run. Switched back up to that pass, and I thought, wow, this guy's got a lot of energy. But anyway, there's so many times, so many thoughts that I cherish. Working with Tom as my former boss, Les. I trained Les. And Calvin Tanner is here somewhere. He's another one that was really part of the where's Calvin? Raise your hand, Cal. Hey, he spent a lot of days in those missions too. He knows what it's like. So, you know, we were just a tight group. It just seemed like that it was meant to be. And again, I just want to thank you all for having that opportunity to spend that quality or that amount of time in my life to enjoy something so beautiful. And if it wasn't for the forethought and the foresight of people who are here today, like Doug Allard and Thurman and Shirley, and I know she speaks for her mother Louise and Annie Pierre and Christine Woodcock, and those who really was kind of the hub of why this area is preserved for us today. So with that, is that my 1 minute? Yes. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to call up a gentleman who I feel in his own ways has been an activist, a supporter, been involved in many different things in different areas since he's been back around. I'd like you to please welcome Mr. Doug Allard.
Thank you, Tony. I don't know where I've been since I've been back. I didn't know I left. No, he's talking about 30 years ago when I did come back here. My interest today is in talking some more about Louise McDonald, Christine Woodcock, Mitch Small Salmon, who was instrumental in a movement we had back then. Mid-1970s, we formed a new powwow committee here on the reservation. We formed it particularly to get rid of the beer garden. And Arlie, these elders were part of our committee. And at one of our meetings, we got to talking about the proposed Ashley Lake logging unit, which is just north of here. And the two ladies there, Christine and Louise, said that that shouldn't be logged. Everyone agreed. They said that that was the home of their blue jays, that this whole area here was our people's place of beauty. And they said to me, why don't you form a committee to see if you can stop this? In those days, any of you that were active around here, if you knew Christine and Louise, if they said climb that tree, you better climb the tree, because if you didn't, they no longer would support you. If they didn't support you in your powwows, any other activities that you wanted to have, if you had an event and they weren't there, it was down the tubes in about half an hour. Everybody left. So in those days, I was really busy, and I'm still really busy, I guess. So I said, well, yeah, we'll try to form a committee. So I saw Christine and Louise at the next meeting, and they said, did you get the committee formed? Yeah, I said, I did. Lie, I never formed nothing. And Dave Rockwell knows about this. He's laughing there now. So I formed a committee of no people but me. And someone here today mentioned the Save the Mission Mountains Committee. That was it. I didn't have time to recruit anybody, and I didn't want to argue with anybody. I didn't want to have people like Bearhead on my committee who oppose everything I say. In the committee I had, no one argued with me. We printed these great big scroll ads, put them in all the newspapers. It said Save the Mission Mountains Committee is opposing the sale of Ashley Lake, etc. Clear down at the bottom, and you have to remember that in those years, and Dave just mentioned this to me a little while ago, a tribal wilderness area was unheard of. Not only was it unheard of, it wasn't a very popular idea. Anyway, we printed up these, put the ads in the papers, and we had all these big petitions around that said we want to save this area, stop the logging unit, etc. The old ladies were happy. They didn't know there wasn't anybody else on the committee. They didn't care either, as long as it was getting done, and it was getting done at that time to their satisfaction. During those years, because this was not a popular cause, Dave Rockwell and I had to have more or less secret meetings in my basement to discuss what area we were going to suggest as being the tribal area. And he'd come from me, and then he'd go up and talk to Thurman Trosper. Thurman and I disagreed on where the boundaries should be, but never once in all this time did we talk with each other about it, because it was not a popular concept. Would you agree to that, Dave? At that time, and Thurman, nobody really knew what a primitive area was. Nobody wanted to do anything but cut wood and get money. Well, we figured out up here that every tribal member would get about 15 bucks in a net profit in the land sale. But these old ladies were the ones who got it done. They're the ones who pushed the rest of us to do it. And in the end, what they did is to take all of these petitions one day. A lady that worked for me hauled them down to the agency in Dixon, which is just before it left there. That's where they took them. And they sat in the front row with this pile of petitions. No one actually ever read the petitions or checked the names. They didn't have to, because we had 1,200 or 1,300 names, which was adequate. Christine sat down with these. Louise sat down beside her. They each had a pile of petitions. I think Christine probably said 25 words, something to the effect that all of these people have signed these petitions and they don't want any logs cut or roads built on the face of the Mission Mountains. In the space of about 40 or 50 seconds, the Tribal Council vetoed the Ashley Lake sale and voted in favor of the petition that we had, which clear on the bottom had a little thing about ultimately becoming a tribal wilderness area. That was the start of the whole wilderness movement on this reservation. And those two old ladies are 100%. All I was a little tool for them. All the council was a little tool for them. They wanted to get something done, and they did. And I think that someday, if there's ever any naming done within this reservation on anything to do with wilderness, that those two ladies, Christine Woodcock, Louise McDonald, Mitch Small Salmon was there too, but around the ladies, Mitch didn't say much. He didn't get a chance. They ran the show in those days. It was no equal opportunity employer there. They ran the show. They ran our powwow committee. They ran our Save the Mission Mountains committee. They ran everything. So if there's ever any naming to be done in honor of starting this Mission Mountain wilderness, tribal wilderness area, I would like to see those two ladies considered for some type of honor, because in reality, they're the ones who are really the saviors of these Mission Mountains that we love and that we're looking at right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doug. Next, I'd like to introduce a gentleman equally as active in many issues here on the reservation, the wilderness, renaming some of the peaks along with her sister, Lucille. Please welcome Thurman Trosper.
Thank you, Tony. I hate to get up here and disagree right away with Allard. We didn't agree exactly on the boundaries of the wilderness area, but he made a statement that I have to take issue with. I actually started educating the council and a lot of the tribal members back in the 60s. On two occasions, I had invited the National Wilderness Council, which was a national organization. On two occasions, I invited them out to take a trip through the wilderness, which we did. And they were very supportive. They recognized that they really didn't have much to say about it. But on one of the trips, the last trip we took, we actually invited the tribal council to go along with us. And I think this was part of the education process of the council. I want to make a few remarks about that. When I retired, I came back to the reservation back in 1973. But before that, I had met with the council on several occasions, and to present the idea of making a Mission Mountains tribal wilderness. And you have to recognize that the council at that time were pressed for income, to generate income for the tribe. And the only place we could get that income was from the forest. And when I made the recommendation, there were two main questions came up. He said, well, but you will lock up the timber. We won't have access to the timber, particularly the timber up there in the basin back of Mount McDonald, Mount Harding, as we called it then. And have all of you been up to Summit Lake? How many have been up to Summit Lake? Not very many. One of my great disappointments in working on the wilderness and trying to educate people about it was that very, very few of our tribal members ever go into the wilderness. I don't know if they're frightened of it, or if they don't have time, but in order to appreciate what's there, you've got to go in and live with it for a while. So one of the questions that came forth was, well, but if you make the wilderness, you're going to lock up the timber, particularly the timber back there in the basin, the Summit Lake Basin. If you've never been up there, you know that there's about 8 miles of solid rock to go through. We couldn't even build a horse trail up that canyon until the CCs came along, and I had a trail locator that found one little place where you could put some short switchbacks in and build a trail up into the basin. And I go over that many times, and I call that the angel's staircase. Because once you've negotiated the short switchbacks, particularly if you have stock, you're in heaven. It's really a beautiful trip from there on out. Anyhow, the chairman of the council was Walter McDonald, and he said, "Well, if we make that a wilderness, then we'll lose control of the area." I said, "Oh no, Walter, you won't lose control. You will set up your own policies, your own regulations, your own boundaries, and you will have absolute control of how it will be managed." And this was the first meeting. I had several meetings with him. And finally, the last meeting, I guess I had kind of worn him down. They said, "Well, if we do this, how do we go about it?" I said, "Well, it's a very simple process. There's a group down at the University of Montana called the Wilderness Institute. And these young people really will spend their summer making a study of the area, and they'll work for nothing. Well, actually, they'll work for grub." They said, "Well, how much will it cost?" I said, "Well, it costs about $25,000. And they said, "Oh, that's way too much. We can't afford that." So we ended up with $35,000 instead of $3,500. And I talked to David. Well, the forestry school put this proposition before the Wilderness Institute, and they did gather up about 6 students. And the leader of that group was David Rockwell, who sits right over there. Raise your hand, Dave. He led the study group, and they worked all summer on the boundary location, west boundary location. No problem with the east boundary because it's the divide. And came up with a lot of information. Then he approached me and said, "Well, where do we go now? What do we do?" I said, "Well, get one of the reports that the Forest Service has made on one of the wildernesses, and just kind of follow that as an outline and fill in the blanks," which he did. And lo and behold, he presented that plan to the council, and I nearly fell out of the chair. The council approved it, because what it did in effect was put the boundary way down at the foothills. And I knew that there had been a lot of logging going on in the Mission Mountain in the face, particularly right back at where I was raised. up there just south of North Crow Creek. That area was logged clear up to the rim rock, and it was logged with horses. And you folks here today are much too young to remember that. I just barely remember it. But Polly's Lumber Company put a railroad in, which went by that about a mile south of Ronan, went east, and it spread south and went north. And they logged timber there for several years. And I used to go back there and watch them log. It was all done with horses, except at the very last, they brought in a couple of caterpillars. They were very narrow gauge, very high, top heavy, and one of them tipped over and killed the operator. But that was the beginning of the bulldozers. They weren't bulldozers then; they were just crawler tractors. Anyhow, that for years that area just south of North Crow Creek was bare as it could be. It was a clear cut, clear up to the rocks. And in 1934, it caught fire and it burned. You look at it today, and it's a beautiful, beautiful carpet of yellow pine. You'll never know it was logged. But the Wilderness Society said, well, we're not going to put land in the wilderness that has been logged. But I was very well pleased that the study group said the boundary should be down at the bottom of the hill, the bottom of the mountain. So that's how that happened. I did have this difference with Allard. I should thought it was a small difference. It was on the west boundary. He wanted to put the boundary on the A Canal, which would have been great. My only objection to it was that you just can't put private land in a wilderness area. You can't deny the owner of the land of access, and it just doesn't work out. So you either have to buy the land or put the boundary back of it. I would like to mention just a couple of things that my own experience. Back in the early 30s, we used to backpack into the mountains a lot. And later on, I went into the mountains with Ignace Conco. Many of you probably remember Ignace Conco, a real wonderful, wonderful person. And he would take me as a greenhorn into the mountains on horseback. And we didn't go up Post Creek because there was no trail. We went over Eagle Pass. And anybody that could take a horse over Eagle Pass had to be a pretty good expert horseman. Well, I was an expert horseman, but I didn't know much about getting a horse up over the rocks and over the cliffs and without losing him. And we went into over Eagle Pass and down to Summit Lake. And by the way, I'm accused of having named Summit Lake. This was in the early days when the lakes weren't named. But my friend Bud Chef said, well, you made the name of Summit Lake. Anyhow, we went over Eagle Pass and down across that beautiful valley, over the next pass, which is called Goatfoot Pass. I said, well, why did they call it Goatfoot Pass? He said, well, the Indians had to have feet like goats to go over the pass. So we went over Goatfoot Pass and down into a real narrow little canyon and up to the left. And one time when I went over there in the fall, Bud Chef and I were working our way up to this narrow canyon. 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I looked up and I saw a star. I said, Bud, I must be seeing things. He said, oh no, that's a star, all right. But that canyon was so narrow and so shaded, it was like looking out of a well. And we went up Goatfoot Pass and on down along the other ridge above a beautiful lake, which they now call Spider Lake, and switched back and went down into Crazy Horse. Crazy Horse is right directly up over the mountain from McDonald Creek and McDonald Lake. That's Crazy Horse. Wonderful place to hunt because nobody in their right mind would hunt over there. It was just too hard to get in and out of. But we went over there every fall. On 2 occasions we got snowed in. Couldn't come back over the Indian Trail, so we went around and went up through Crow Creek. And one of the times we went up through Crow Creek, it had snowed. While it had snowed, we couldn't get back through Eagle Pass. And I heard we were working our way up toward the pass, and the snow was getting up to the horses' knees. It was very quiet, and I heard this singing, Indian women singing. I said, boy, I must be hearing things. And pretty soon I stopped the pack string and I said, Bud, do you hear that? He said, yeah, I hear that. So we waited a while and we pulled our horses off the trail, and here came a whole lot of Indian hunters, and women and men. I knew a lot of them at that time. Most of those folks are dead now. And we were coming out of the mountains thinking that we were lucky to get out, and they were just going in to hunt, going to the Swan River to hunt. And we were worried about getting out of the mountains. Well, getting back to the wilderness, it took a lot of effort on the part of a lot of people. And the thing that pleased me most was the fact that the tribal members, not knowing exactly what wilderness meant and how you go about protecting it, but they knew they wanted to protect the land. And so when this plan was presented to the council, they approved it, which really amazed me. They approved it without question. And so now we have a tribal wilderness protected by tribal policy. As far as I know, this is the only wilderness in the whole world that's been set aside by indigenous people for absolute protection. And I think that's one thing we need to be proud of. There's a lot more I could talk about, but I think it's time for me to wind it up. Thank you.
Thank you, Thurman. Before I wrap it up, I would like to invite anybody that wants to come up here to leave the mic open for a couple of minutes.
And not just for what the thoughts were of people that have gone to the other side and their feelings about the mountains, but I think that there's something about this place that's magic. Something that when you come over that hill, when you've been gone, you sense that you're home. No matter where you've been, no matter how hard the trail's been. And I think that we as Indian people oftentimes take for granted the beauty that we've been given in the land that is our homeland. And we have to learn to balance what our needs are today with the demands that are placed on us, and was said a little bit ago about the tribal council. And I can tell you this, it's the hardest job in the world. And there always is a demand for resources. But the tribal council, I believe, has the vision and has the courage to do what it needs to do to make sure that generations to come will have a homeland. These mountains are particularly important to me for a number of reasons. They're particularly important to each and every one of us for a number of reasons. But I think it's fitting that we pay tribute to the dedication of a wilderness, but also would remind you that we need to dedicate ourselves to the preservation of the reservation as a whole. And that the issues that we are confronted with as Indian people are not easy issues. Some of them are very volatile issues. But the magic that is in those mountains and the spirits that reside there are the things that I believe give us the strength every morning to get up and believe that we can make a difference. And so I'm really pleased to be here today to just be a part of this. And I'm really pleased to see the people that are here. And in closing, I would like to thank everybody that was involved in the creation of this, and to encourage those that are involved in the other issues of tribal survival to not lose hope, to not give up on the things that are important so that generations to come, we can all be talked about as though we cared about our land. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Anybody else? Okay.
My name is Carrie Gunderson, and I'm the person they're telling all these stories about, so now it's my turn. You conjured up some memories for me, Fred, about the unsolicited helicopter rescue that was 10 years ago. And what really stuck in my heart and soul of that incident, once I got out, I contacted Tom and Fred, and I said, well, I know you guys sent in a tribal helicopter to get me, and I appreciate that a lot. Now, how much do I owe you for the helicopter bill? I took a deep breath, and they said, well, Carrie, we consider you one of the family. We're going to waive the fee. And that meant a lot to me, and it really solidified all the feelings that I've had over the years for these folks. And I want to make sure that credit is given where credit is due. All day I've been fighting this lump in my throat to just keep from breaking into tears. I know this feeling happens when people go to weddings, but I too feel in such awe with this kind of backdrop. But folks like Herschel Mays and Fred Matt and Tom McDonald and Les Big Crane and Calvin and Terry Tanner and David Rockwell and, did I say Tom McDonald? And Chip Espinoza. They've always been there for me. I know it's kind of a lonely place when you're up there in the boonies and there's 18 inches of snow on the ground. It's the middle of August and you're at the head of High Park Lake and you're wondering how long you're going to be there. So when the chips are down, I know who's there for me. And I thank all of you. I thank your elders. I think of Louise and Christine. I've got a picture of them in my office, and they are my role models. And without your wisdom, the Mission Mountains wouldn't be there today in the place they're at. And it's a great honor to be here and a great occasion. And thank you all for the gift that you've given to all of us.
Okay, I guess that's it. Vida?
Hello, everybody. My name is Bida Matt. I've been raised here on the reservation most of my life, and I wasn't planning on saying much, but my dad, Dewey Matt, practically lived up here. Him and my Uncle Joe Squeaky. And they used to fish up this, come up here every day and fish about everywhere, any part of the lake they fish. They always bring something back. One particular time over here, North Bank, Dewey was laid back on the bank there. Where's Greek? And by golly, his pole started going like that. Oh, getting a bite, geez, gosh. Wanted to get up there and get his pole, down into the lake it went. And he lost his pole, man. Fish took it out. He never did get it back. And he came back from home, came home that night from fishing and says, "You'll never believe this one, Bid." I said, "What's that, Dad?" "Fish took my pole in the lake." I said, "Oh, no, kid. Yeah, he took it right down into the lake." He said, "Is that right?" So later on, I see that next week or next few days, there was what they call a contest on KQ92, KQRK station about the best fish story that's true that anybody could call up and tell about. So the seventh caller, I think it was the seventh caller, Fred. They said the seventh caller will tell their story and you'll win a 10-pound ham a 10-pound ham from Super One. So the 7th caller rang. I called in and I was the 7th caller. He said, hey, you're the lucky winner. What's your name? I said, yeah, I'm Bitter Matt from St. Ignatius. Oh, congratulations, you won a 10-pound ham from Super One in Polson. I said, what's your fish story? And by golly, I got to telling him that story. I just told you guys about my dad losing his pole in the lake up here, and this year, man, everybody at work says, hey, I heard you won, you was on the radio, better, congratulations to you. You won a ham, huh? Yeah, big one. But I tell you, I just had to bring this up, and this wilderness area, you call it wilderness, man, because it's so special. I'm lucky I'm here. I got a home of my own, I stay down there, and I got a perfect view of these mountains every morning. And it seems like I got to look at them every morning before I can get on with my day. And I find I have been taking them for granted, but not anymore. But I just want to see this preserved, and I think we all work at it. We can get this done and make it even better yet. So I just want to thank you for listening to my fish story. I'm a former Louie member, by the way. Louie Band member, anyway. I just had to say that. Thanks a lot, you guys, and God bless you all.
Louie. Okay, I'd like again to thank everybody for showing up here today. While I close, I'm going to ask James to play a few songs while I'm talking, because a lot of our songs, a lot of our prayers come from the mountains that you see behind us. It's been happening for thousands of years. The wilderness has been a big part of our culture as Indian people from the beginning of time. The wilderness is a big part in shaping of our lives, of who we are. Our values, our hopes and our dreams have come from these mountains, from all the wilderness throughout the country. Therefore, maintaining wilderness is it's important to our survival. It's important to our future. It's important to our children. And most of all, it's important to our culture. Somebody once said it takes 80 square miles of wilderness for one person to survive. And as you look behind us, that is all we have left as Salish Kootenai people here on the Flathead Nation. The beauty of those mountains has kept us, has protected us, has given us so many things. It has served as a guide bringing us home. It has served as solitude for people seeking vision quests. Vision quest, that big part of our lives. To seek direction for our future, for our children. It has provided us with medicinal plants, medicines that we need to survive from year to year, medicines that we continue to gather, to pick up, that we need. Although we have doctors, although we have hospitals, drugstores, traditional medicine is still the best and the strongest. The very medicine that the doctors prescribe come from areas like the wilderness that you see behind me. It has provided us a place to hunt, a place to gather food, a place to trap beaver, mink, otter, other animals that I used to hear my dad and my Uncle Pete Beaverhead talk about as they traveled back up and forth. Today, as I look up there and see how thick that area is, it was hard for me to imagine that those people, my parents, my relatives, were up there hunting and camping. But just recently, I seen some photographs from the Forestry Service that showed a lot of the face of the wilderness was clear and bare, green, that provided areas for our elk, our deer, and all other animals. So ever since the Indian people have moved here to the foothills of the majestic mountains that you see behind me, it has been home, and it has provided us with everything that we need. So it is easy for us to drive by and talk about it, how beautiful it is, but you have to look beyond that. Look beyond what it has provided our people for thousands of years. These mountains are beautiful, and they can provide for you when you treat it with respect and take care of it. But it also can be dangerous, and it can take your life if you don't treat it with respect. A lot of our medicine, a lot of our spirituality, a lot of those things are still there. A lot of our people continue to seek and to get that guidance from those mountains. Without those mountains and without areas like the wilderness, we would have no place to go. We would have no place to get our strength, our guidance, the things that our grandparents, our parents and grandparents and ancestors have taught us, that respect. It is not necessarily for our benefit that we do these things. It's always for the future generations. It's for those little ones that you see running around, that's still enjoying life as simple as it is. But the time will come when they must learn and understand the resources that we have and how important they are to us as Indian people. So I would like to thank all of those people who came today to participate, to be part of something that has taken a long time to reach. 20 years as a wilderness, but many years before that to get to the point where we're at. So I'd like to thank all the people that have come today: John Stanislaw, Fred Matt, Tom McDonald, Doug Allard, Thurman Trosper, especially the Job Corps kids who have come from different parts of the country to be part of our reservation and have done a tremendous job in being part of our communities and participating and helping us keep our land beautiful. Kevin Howlett for taking the time to come up here. Carrie Gunderson for sharing her story and her concern and her understanding for the wilderness that we work so hard to preserve, to carry on, that our elders have wanted us to. And to Bit Matt for sharing his story. I remember, and I've seen Squeaky Joe and his dad, Old Man Joe Woodcock, a lot of those, Jess Simpkins, all of those regulars that you used to see out here. Those people truly enjoyed our resources, our wilderness, and never did take it for granted. because they were there every day. I would like to thank Les McCrane for inviting me today to be part of this great day. And I hope as we continue on in our different ways today, that every time we drive by and we look at those mountains, that we think about those people that worked hard to preserve it. Those people that are all gone. It is now on our shoulders to carry those hard works and efforts of these people to make sure that our young people that are running around have the same opportunity as us. And with that, I'd like to say thank you. Thank you very much. Closing, I will ask the I'd like to have Terry come up here to say a few words before we have Home Sweet Home. And we'll have Home Sweet Home. And then I have to remind everybody we have some food left over back there. The old tradition is you never leave food, so fill your pockets before you leave. Lem lemch.
Before we break this afternoon, I would just like to, it's just been a really humbling day for me being here and preparing and getting this place ready this week. I just wanted to give a really heartful thank you to the Kicking Horse Job Corps for helping out this week, for grading the roads and for coming up here and helping us. I'd like to also thank the new camp crew for this year, Vicky Morjo and all the camp crew that just got done with their training today. This is part of their training to help set up camp today. So I really wanted to thank Vicky Morjo and the camp crew for the forestry division. So thank you. I'd also like to thank a very special thank you to Richard Alexander. He's always there. He works so diligently for the Flathead Culture Committee, and he has for years. I want to really honor Richard Alexander for all the hard work that he does and taking on the summer youth employees during the summertime and working them and really teaching them what work's all about. And I'd really want to thank Richard Alexander for helping out today too. Last but not least, I'd like to thank my crew, the summer youth workers that are working for Wildland Recreation this summer, and the 6 seasonal people that I have working. They do a really hard job. It's our job for keeping all the high mountain trails in order, keeping the garbage picked up here on the reservation and on the river corridor. Our river corridor gets hammered really bad, and I'm getting sick and tired of it, and I'm thinking about shutting the river corridor down, so get that through your head. But I really want to thank my employee, or the Wildland Recreation employees, and through the guidance of Lester and Tom and myself, we try to do the best job that we can in order to keep the campgrounds clean, the bathrooms intact, and it's an uphill battle sometimes, but we do the best we can. So I just want to really thank our employees that we have this summer for the hard work that they do. Oh, yeah, last but not least, Mr. Education and Information, Rich Jansen. I'd really like to give him a hand. He does a lot of hard work, and he does really good work for the tribes and getting the information out there and to help the public understand what our needs are as tribal people. So thank you, Rich. And I just want to thank all of you for coming today and sharing this special monumental event that we had today, and I just really thank you from the bottom of my heart. So Lem Lemsh.